In this video, we reveal the deadly collision between social media bravado and raw animal power, where chasing the perfect shot becomes a fatal mistake. First, an alligator drags down a kayaker in Florida. Then a macaque turns a selfie into a brutal mid-air mauling in Hong Kong. And finally, a harpy eagle sends a crane operator plummeting from the sky in China. Starting off, we have a kayaker mocked a fisherman's warning. And seconds later, an alligator's jaws pulled him under in a death roll. At 10:34 on a scorching Friday, the air in central Florida's green swamp was a wet blanket. The humidity, a staggering 92%. Sunlight pierced the cypress canopy in fragmented spears, speckling the murky water of the Withlacoochee River with oily gleams. The only sounds were the buzz of cicadas, the distant drone of a boat motor, and the soft, rhythmic splash of a kayak paddle. The river moved slow, a black ribbon of liquid heat, its surface broken by the occasional bubble of trapped swamp gas. Jason, 31, a self-styled reptile enthusiast and social media personality, paddled with a careless ease. He was known for his bravado, for a brand built on proximity to danger. His feed was a curated gallery of close calls, selfies with rattlesnakes, a clip of him teasing a bull shark from a pier, his face an arrogant smirk. Jason believed his knowledge gave him a pass. He saw himself as a modern-day naturalist, a man who understood the language of predators, who could read their intent. He had a following of 500,000, all of them hungry for the next dose of his reckless courage. His kayak, a bright yellow plastic shell, cut a clear line through the dark water. He wore a GoPro on his chest, a live feed streaming his every move, his every miscalculation. The American alligator, Alligator mississippiensis, is a perfect ambush predator. An adult male can reach 15 feet and weigh up to 1,000 pounds, its body a scaly fortress of muscle and bone. But the true horror is in its jaws. The bite force of an alligator has been measured at over 2,000 pounds per square inch, an astronomical pressure that eclipses all but a handful of animals on Earth. The jaws are a hydraulic press, designed not for tearing, but for crushing and holding. The teeth are conical, like pegs, built to punch holes in bone and anchor the animal's grip. This grip is not a fleeting snap. It is a commitment. The alligator's primary killing method is the death roll, a violent spiraling rotation that uses its immense body weight to tear a limb from its socket or drown its prey. It is an act of pure, mechanical violence, a biomechanical marvel of brute force. The gator doesn't fight, it annihilates. Just before entering the deeper water, a fisherman in a skiff, his face a leathery mask of sun and age, called out, "Hey man, you're going too close to that bend. Gator's been sighted there. A big one. Been here 40 years, I ain't never seen one like it." Jason just laughed, a sound that carried across the water. "Don't worry, old-timer, I know what I'm doing," he yelled back, his voice thick with condescension. The fisherman just shook his head, a gesture of mournful resignation. The air grew still. The cicadas fell silent. The water, a coffee-colored murk, hid what lay beneath. The warning was clear. The danger was unseen. Jason, however, saw only the opportunity for content. Jason's action was a direct product of his hubris. He wanted a shot, a money shot for his followers. He wanted a glimpse of the prehistoric predator, a close-up that would go viral. He paddled a few more strokes, deeper into the dark water of the bend, his gaze scanning the bank for a ripple, a glint of an eye. He knew the warning. He ignored it. He saw the potential for fame. He chose the risk. He stopped paddling. He waited. He became bait. From the alligator's perspective, the world was a silent theater of vibrations. The yellow kayak was not a boat. It was a rhythmic disturbance on the surface, a low-frequency hum that carried through the water. The human shape above it was a vague thermal signature. The air above the surface was a different medium, but the water, its natural habitat, was a perfect conduit for a silent approach. The alligator wasn't hungry. It was territorial. The kayak was an intrusion. The creature sank deeper, its lungs holding a reserve of oxygen for the attack. It was a missile. It was a torpedo. It was a predator. The strike was a sudden explosive breach of the surface. Not a splash, but a geyser of black water and white foam. It was a torpedo strike. It was a hammer blow. The kayak jolted sideways. The impact a percussive slap that jarred Jason from his seat. The GoPro, still rolling, captured the chaos. The camera's angle plunged, a chaotic blur of sky and water. He was thrown into the river. The first contact was a clamp on his left calf. A vice that locked on with a sick thud. The bite was not a snap, it was a crush. The 2,000 pounds per square inch of force pulverized the muscle. The fibula, a grinding splinter. Jason's scream was a choked gurgle as he was yanked down, pulled under. The water was cold. The world went dark. The grip was absolute. Then the rotation began. The death roll. He felt the world spin, a violent, disorienting churn. The water was a swirling vortex. His body was a rag doll. The roll was not a graceful motion. It was a clumsy, violent grinding, a brutal exercise in leverage. He felt the bones in his knee give way, a grinding pop that echoed in his skull. The grip shifted, the teeth repositioning on his thigh. He felt his femur crack, a deep, sickening break. The world tilted. The air was gone. The water filled his lungs. The pressure was a vice. The roll continued, a relentless, bone-shredding spin. The world was a blur of darkness and agony. Then, nothing. The surface of the river returned to its placid state. The drone of the boat. Motor returned. The kayak, overturned, floated 20 feet away, its yellow hull a stark contrast against the dark water. The GoPro had been ripped from its mount, sinking to the riverbed, its recording of the final moments preserved in the murky depths. The fisherman, hearing the commotion, had circled back. He found Jason's body floating face down, his limbs at unnatural angles, his wetsuit torn to shreds. A call went out. Sheriff's deputies and fish and wildlife officials arrived at the scene, their airboat blades chopping at the humid air. The medical examiner's report would later describe catastrophic injuries, consistent with a powerful crocodilian attack. The left leg was a mangled ruin, the femur and fibula shattered, the knee joint dislocated, the flesh was pulped, the muscle tissue avulsed. The extensive damage, the report stated, was caused by extreme compression and a violent rotational force, the signature of a death roll. The footage from the GoPro, later recovered, would become evidence, a final, unvarnished look at a man who believed he was an exception to the rules of nature. The human cost here is immeasurable. A family lost a son, a community lost a member, and his followers, once drawn to his bravado, were left with a permanent, chilling warning. The lesson here is not about a single animal, but about a universal truth. The wild doesn't care about your expertise. It doesn't care about your reputation. It doesn't care about your intentions. It doesn't recognize your name. It only recognizes your presence as a threat or as prey. The true danger is not the beast. It is the hubris of the man who believes he is its equal. Next, we come to the story of an influencer who ignored shouted warnings until a territorial macaque turned her fall into a savage mid-air attack. At 1700 hours on April 10th, 2023, the air hung thick and damp over Ha Pak Lai Park, Hong Kong. Humidity was at a stifling 85%. The sun, a brutal white disk, was beginning its slow descent, its light filtering through the dense tropical canopy. The waterfall, a 10-foot cascade of churning brown water, roared in the distance. The ground, slick with algae and mud, was treacherous. This was the scene for Sophia Chung, a 32-year-old influencer, to stage her final photograph. Sophia was known for her extreme selfies, shots that blended high-fashion glamour with a calculated risk. Her Instagram, a grid of carefully curated danger, was a testament to her brand. A life lived on the edge. Her bio, life should be fun and not stupid, was a self-aware wink to her audience. A nod to the razor's edge she walked. Today, the razor would cut her deep. With her tripod extended, her phone angled just so, she edged closer to the precipice, her platform boots skidding on the wet rocks. The antagonist of this story, unbeknownst to Sophia, was a Ha-Pak-Lai Park native. It wasn't a waterfall-dwelling beast, but a large male macaque. Its species, Macaca mulatta, had a robust build, weighing in at a formidable 60 pounds of muscle and aggression. Macaques are not ambush predators in the traditional sense, but they are opportunistic and highly territorial. This male was a veteran, his face scarred, his right eye a milky white from a past brawl. His teeth, powerful and sharp, were designed for tearing and crushing. An animal behaviorist would note his posture. The low crouch and the flared nostrils was a clear signal of territorial defense, a silent warning lost on a human so engrossed in her digital reality. The macaque's warning was echoed by a local hiker, a man in his late 50s who shouted, "Hey, you shouldn't be so close to the cliff. They're getting aggressive lately." Sophia, her back to him, just waved a dismissive hand, the gesture as flippant as her bio. Sophia, obsessed with capturing the perfect angle, took another step backward. Her focus was entirely on the screen, on the grid lines and the lighting. Her phone, a small black rectangle, was her whole world. One more shot, the last one. She leaned back, her body a perfect S-curve against the backdrop of the churning water. Her foot slipped. A small, panicked squeal escaped her lips. The world tilted, the camera spiraling, the brown water a blur of chaos. She was falling, tumbling over the lip of the cliff, the air rushing past her ears. The macaque, its biological imperative overriding any sense of caution, saw the fall as a direct challenge, an encroachment on its territory. Its brain, a primitive but efficient machine, processed the sudden movement as a threat. The animal's senses, finally, tuned to the rhythms of the forest, registered the vibrations of her fall. It was an instinctual response, a defensive strike. It didn't see a human. It saw a rival, an intruder. The strike was a brutal, swift sequence. The macaque, dropping from a tree limb in a blur of brown fur, met her in midair. One moment she was in free fall. The next, a heavy weight slammed into her chest. The air was knocked from her lungs in a breathless gasp. The macaque's canines, honed to a razor edge, locked onto her arm. The force was bone-shattering. A sickening crack echoed over the roar of the waterfall. Its jaws clamped down, not in a single bite, but in a series of punishing rapid-fire chomp and release motions, each one delivering a tearing, shredding blow. The arm gave way, the bone splinters driving into muscle and sinew. Her scream was cut short as the macaque's second strike, a flurry of hands and feet, connected with her face and neck. Its powerful legs delivered a series of punishing concussive blows, its claws digging into her flesh, a savage tattoo of trauma. The primate, its job done, let go, and she continued her fall, a broken, mangled doll. Her body, now a shattered husk, landed with a sickening thud on the jagged rocks below. The immediate aftermath was a scene of controlled chaos. The macaque, its defensive posture still intact, scampered back into the dense undergrowth, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. The hiker, his face pale with shock, fumbled for his phone, his voice a terrified whisper. She fell. The monkey, it attacked her. The call to authorities was frantic, disjointed. A siren, a distant wail, began to grow louder. The official response was swift. Paramedics and search and rescue teams arrived, their faces grim as they took in the scene. Her body, lying broken at the base of the waterfall, was unrecognizable. The medical examiner's report would be a clinical, gruesome read. Her right arm, a mangled ruin of splintered bone and shredded tissue, bore the distinct markings of a primate attack. The cause of death, however, would be ruled as a blunt force trauma from the fall. The community, shaken by the incident, would mourn her, a young life extinguished in a flash of reckless bravado. Her family would be left with a void, her digital ghost a constant reminder of a life lived for the screen. The painful lesson here is a harsh but simple one. Nature is not a backdrop for a selfie. It's an arena with its own rules. A place where a moment of inattention can cost you everything. The wilderness doesn't care about your follower count, your perfect angle, or your carefully crafted persona. It doesn't negotiate. When you step into its world, you are no longer the star of your own show. You are just a biological entity, a bag of meat and bone, and sometimes a single misstep is all it takes to remind you of that fact permanently. The final story belongs to a vlogger dancing atop a crane for her live stream meeting her end as she plunges 40 meters below. At 1600 hours on a blistering July afternoon, the air above the construction site in Quanzhou, China, hung heavy with dust and the metallic scent of heated steel. The humidity, a suffocating 70%, made every breath a chore. The sun, a brutal, unfiltered blaze, hammered down on the concrete and rebar below. 143 feet above the ground, in the exposed cabin of a tower crane, 23-year-old Xiao Qiyumei was preparing for her live stream. Xiao was a vlogger, her online persona, a blend of working-class grit and saccharine digital charm. Her feed was a constant stream of her life as a crane operator, her dance videos, shot in the precarious confines of her cabin, garnering millions of views. The crane was her stage, a backdrop for a dangerous performance she had perfected. Her critical misjudgment was not a single event, but a habit, an addiction to the validation her audience provided. She was always on, always performing, even when it meant compromising her own safety. Just before going live, she'd rigged her phone on a makeshift mount. She laughed into the camera, a practiced, bubbly sound. Just one quick dance, guys. The view is amazing today. The predator, an apex hunter in its domain, wasn't on the ground, but in the air. A harpy eagle, harpia, its 20-foot wingspan a menacing shadow, was far from its native South American rainforest. This individual, a mature female, had been a captive bird, sold illegally, and transported to a private collector. Having escaped, it was now an apex predator in a new, alien environment. Its talons were its primary weapon. Each talon, as long as a bear's claw, was capable of exerting over 500 pounds of crushing pressure per square inch. Its hunting method was a silent, lethal strike from above, using the element of surprise and gravity to its advantage. An ornithologist would note the bird's dilated pupils and the slight twitch in its feathered crest, a clear sign of a predator in a hunt state. The warning came from the environment itself, the sudden, unnatural silence of the small birds and insects, a collective hush that fell over the work site as the shadow of a hunter passed over. Xiao, her focus entirely on her screen and her own reflection, heard nothing. Xiao, caught up in the rhythm of her dance, reached a crescendo, her arms wide, her body swaying to the music only she could hear. Her phone, the epicenter of her digital world, wobbled on its mount. A sudden gust of wind, a whisper of a thing was all it took. The phone, a black rectangle containing her identity, her livelihood, her very existence, was knocked free. It fell, a slow-motion tumble. Her breath hitched. A panicked primal instinct took over. No, she whispered. Her hand, a reflex of desperation, darted out. She lunged, her body a blur of motion. It was a critical, fatal decision, born of an ingrained need to recover the device that was her link to the world, to her followers, to her life. From the predator's perspective, the world below was a landscape of potential prey. Its eyes, the size of a human fist, were a marvel of biological engineering, granting it 8 times the visual acuity of a human. The crane operator's sudden, jerky movement, a flail, a lunge, was a signal, a disruption in the rhythm of the world below. The bird registered the movement. It was a kill signal. The human, a large, clumsy creature, was now a target. The wind, a tool for the harpy eagle, shifted in its favor, guiding it, a ghost of a sound on its silent flight. The strike was a single, explosive event. The harpy eagle, a blur of motion and steel-sharp talons, dropped. There was no sound, only the sudden impact of a 100-pound bird of prey hitting its target. The talons, designed to punch through bone and muscle, slammed into Xiao's back. A gasp of pure, unfiltered agony was choked out of her lungs. The talons, like railroad spikes, drove deep, puncturing the skin, tearing muscle, and seizing the spinal column. The bird's grip was instant, absolute. Xiao, tethered to the crane by nothing but a flimsy safety harness, was yanked. The jolt was violent, a whiplash of pure force. One tendon in her harness snapped with a sound like a pistol shot. The world spun. The bird, its talons still locked in her spine, began to ascend. It was a grim tug-of-war, the harpy eagle's biological imperative, pulling against the laws of physics. She was not a heavy sloth or monkey to be carried to a nest. She was too heavy. A second tendon snapped. The bird's grip, now a liability, released. She fell, 43 meters to the ground below. The bird circled once, a silent witness, before continuing its hunt for smaller, more suitable prey. The immediate scene was one of chaos. A single broken crane cabin, a phone, its screen shattered, lay on a girder below. On the ground, a crumpled form. The arrival of authorities was met with a grim silence from the construction crew. The medical examiner's report would confirm the brutal efficiency of the strike. The deep puncture wounds on her back and the severe spinal trauma were consistent with the attack of a harpy eagle. The death, however, was attributed to the 43-meter fall. There would be no remains for a funeral, only a shattered body and a broken phone. A final testament to a life lived on a razor's edge. Her death would be a viral footnote, a moment of morbid curiosity for the very audience she had died for. The cautionary lesson here, the brutal truth of this encounter, is a permanent warning. The digital world we build for ourselves is a fiction. It's a house of cards, and when you're 143 feet in the air, a single misplaced lunge, a moment of distraction, can bring the whole thing crashing down. We spend our lives building a persona, a brand, a legacy of likes and views. But the physical world, the one with gravity and wind and instinct, doesn't care about your numbers. It operates on a different set of rules. And here, in a place where the air is thin and the ground is unforgiving, the only thing that matters is your balance, your focus, and your understanding that in some places you are not the main character. You're just prey. A single mistake can be the final cut, and there are no retakes.